Suddenly, in the middle of the night, someone entered the man's room, and he immediately demanded that the person introduce himself, but instead, he just approached him and then waved his hand in front of him, thus assuring him that he really hadn't seen anything. He claimed that she was not his maid, and she confirmed that the man had good intuition, but his general condition left much to be desired. Duke Leonardo Iberk was the emperor's half-brother. 5 years ago, he went on a monster hunt, during which he was cursed and blinded, and now he was wondering who was standing in front of him, to which the guest asked if he had heard of the girl chosen by God. He realized that he was facing none other than the saint, except that the gossip did not say that the saint had lost her mind, and so he was worried about what she was doing in the chambers of the cursed hermit. These words amused the woman. People had already made up a lot of nonsense about her, but for some reason they hadn't thought of insanity yet. So she asked if he knew about the fake, and the unfortunate man said that if she needed an advisor, she had come to the wrong person. Suddenly, she pulled out a dagger and cut her hand, saying that the gossip was true, but not all of it. And then she took it, ordering him to open his mouth and claiming that she would now show him the truth, as her blood had healing powers that had warmed the days of her past more than once. And then he saw people fighting monsters, and a girl in shining armor, skillfully fighting back with both mace and magic, finished with one of them. She heard her called for help. The man was a step away from death, as the monster was already swinging for the decisive blow, and then she instantly ran to the wounded man and repelled the attack, and then counterattacked, thus defeating the monster. The wounded man continued to call for the woman, the name of Lady Gloria, and she immediately sat down next to him, ordering him to sit still, and then wounded her hand and gave him a taste of blood, and in a moment he opened his eyes, which were seriously wounded a minute ago, and not so far away men in elegant clothes were watching them, and they were incredibly annoyed that she was being praised so much. The evening came, and the men were discussing matters with wine in the tent, and the prince said that all this was very annoying to him, and there was no need to pretend that no one had seen it. He was talking about the knight who was looking at her like a mesmerized man. The man next to him assured him that there was nothing strange about it, as he was literally a hair's breadth away from death. And then the duke irritably stated that they were just poor commoners who had fed themselves at the temple. And then the man next to him ordered him to keep an eye on the Yakik, as they had survived so long only because of her and her abilities. The prince confirmed this, adding that everyone was simply fooled by her power, and the imperial palace, along with the temple, were losing power because of this woman, to which the interlocutor said that this conversation was clearly not started to say the obvious. Meanwhile, she was walking tiredly to her tent. There were so many wounded today that it seemed as if she had no blood left, and passing by the tent with the aristocrats, she overheard a conversation, and one of them said that it was time to move from plan to action. The second assured him that they had not yet destroyed all the monsters, and therefore they still needed Gloria, and the prince said that the most dangerous monsters had already been destroyed, and therefore it was time for a new saint. These words made the woman listen better, but she inadvertently caused a noise that the man inside heard, and so he decided to check it out, but there was no one there, and when he returned, he said that the six-pointed star could not be faked, and light must come down from the sky, so it would not be easy to repeat it. To which the prince assured that Joshua had one way, and since Gloria had done it, he should be able to do it too, because he was, after all, a cardinal of the church. Listening to all this outside the tent, the heroine realized what they wanted to do to the saint, and it would probably be worthwhile to deal with them right now. Later, all three of them returned with a triumphant victory, and people around them were talking about the gossip that Gloria was not a real saint. Some of them convinced that it was not true, and that one should not even think about such things. Some people were already beginning to believe in these gossips, claiming that a poor woman could not become a saint, but in the end, she had been helping soldiers on the battlefield for almost 10 years. They said that the new saint could heal with a single touch, and yet it was scary to drink someone else's blood. And at this point, ordinary soldiers began to intervene, accusing the people of not understanding what they were saying. They all almost died there, and they met them like this. They could not imagine what it was like to fight monsters, and Saint Gloria made a lot of effort so that they could walk here now. Then an aristocrat intervened, addressing the people, asking them not to make any early conclusions, not to act rashly, and to keep a clear mind and calm. The woman realized that they had started false gossip, and this meant that this was their true face. For a long time, Gebrian was a high-ranking official in the empire and participated in monster campaigns, as well as being the head of the Reynarch family and a respected foster father of Gloria. And now in the house, he asked the woman if she knew what she had done. The heroine realized that she had shed so much blood for this nation, and they still dared to think that way about her. And yet she assured him that she was not at all to blame for this situation, and the gossip was false. But he didn't care whether it was a lie or not. Only she was now to blame for the fact that people were calling her a false saint, and her authority began to fall in the eyes of people. And if she had behaved properly, this situation would never have arisen. She was an orphan and lived on the streets until she received a sign at the age of 8. No one ever asked her if she wanted to be chosen by God, and now her father accused her that because of her inappropriate behavior, the whole empire now doubted that her abilities were real. And then she shed her own blood for so many years to heal the wounded. But she was still seen as a poor woman from the street, and her husband said that he did not see a drop of remorse in her eyes, and therefore he did not intend to tolerate it anymore. And therefore, from that day on, the Reynarch family would no longer protect her. The shock in her eyes quickly gave way to anger, and her father directly said that he was no longer her anyone, and that he was abandoning her, and she was to some extent happy about this, thinking that this was very good news. The aristocrat said that he did not intend to listen to her excuses, and therefore she could calmly pack her things and get out of this house, and he, in turn, would immediately inform the emperor about it, and that was all. After a little thought, she calmly stood up and said that she understood everything and would do so. Her face was smiling, and this made the owner worried. Getting ready to leave, she realized that there was no point in objecting to her father, and she had been ready to leave for a long time. On the way out, men in luxurious clothes were waiting for her, and the first person to address her was Alexian Meredith, the crown prince, who asked if she had decided to run away and if she was still ashamed to face the people she had deceived. Next to him stood Demonian, the duke, and Gloria's fiancé, Caius, who was the owner of the magic tower, and Joshua, who was the cardinal of the temple. Such was the gathering of traitors. As she approached, the prince said that she had committed a crime for which she should be punished, and instead of running away in fear for herself, she realized that they were just lucky to be born into a rich family. But in reality, they were all incredibly horrible people. Then Caius intervened and asked the prince to calm down, since she could not even say a word in her defense, and the cardinal supported this, adding that it would be difficult to explain anything in this situation, and she dared to impersonate a saint. Caius came closer, asked how she managed to deceive everyone for so long, and whether she had no conscience for it at all. And the prince added that she should immediately be taken away from everything she had ever had. The woman was now sincerely glad that her father had finally kicked her out, and she sincerely did not understand how she could have tolerated all this time. And the prince continued to explain that, first of all, she had to give up the status of the one she had received by deception. Without letting him finish, she claimed that she had been excluded from the family, thus shocking everyone present. Then, she added that she had never enjoyed any special benefits, and therefore there was nothing special to take away from them. After that, she dropped her suitcase and took out her mace, assured them that she had to go, and a moment later, as if remembering something, she waved in their direction, thus making everyone scared. She said that she had almost forgotten about their engagement. The woman pretended to be upset, but in her heart she was laughing slyly, and now she said that she did not know what to do, because a commoner could not marry the duke, and if she was no longer a member of Reynarch, then it could be assumed that there was no engagement. The man was very angry, but he had nothing to say, and then she finished that if they had nothing to say, she had to go, as she had a long journey ahead of her. When she went outside, it was raining, and she couldn't believe that this day had finally come. She rented a hotel room. She kept looking in the mirror, wondering how to remove this blessing, and after a moment of thought, she cut off a piece of her hair. But surprisingly, nothing happened. Before, the saints used to be terrified if she touched her hair, They would say endlessly that the hair was a symbol of the saint, and if she cut it off, she would lose all the magical power. But now, nothing happened, and the power was still there. They always forbade everything, but they couldn't even guess how hard it was to comb it, and it was incredibly annoying for the woman. But in any case, she reassured herself that she could cut them off now with a clear conscience. But if it wasn't for this stigmata, she would have left this country long ago. But as soon as she got close to the border, she felt incredibly sick, and she didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. At that moment, it was time to think about how to build an independent life, away from prying eyes, and only one person could help her with this. And now he needed her like no other, and he would definitely give her what she wanted. Sneaking into the manor at night, she was surprised that the fence was so high, but there was no guard, so she decided to simply climb over the fence and then easily find the right person inside. Everything went wrong, and a maid appeared right in front of her, demanding to know who she was, to which the heroine asked to be silent, assuring that she came in peace. But the maid recognized her and therefore did not make a fuss. After taking her inside, she asked if the woman really intended to meet with the Duke, and the maid confirmed that she was, adding that if she got infected, she could be seriously injured. The saint realized that if the servant was so concerned about the master, then it must be much worse than she could have imagined. But she assured him that she would take care of it herself, and thanking him for showing her out, she went inside the room. As she approached, she immediately noticed his green eyes, which showed royal blood, and it seemed that they were the reason for the emperor's hatred. And in a moment the man declared that the curse was gone. He could see again, his fingers began to bend, and he could walk again. The heroine looked at him and couldn't understand whether he was a fool or just very simple, and she asked if he really believed in the words of the others, since they were lying about the curse, and it was clear from his face that he did. The woman explained that his body had been affected by demonic energy, and that is why he became like this. She understood that they were both used and then simply thrown away as soon as they were no longer needed. The heroine continued to explain that when you fight monsters for a long time, their aura could penetrate your body, and she knew this better than anyone else, as she herself had treated soldiers on the battlefield more than once. In the end, his suffering disappeared after a few drops of her blood, but he had to suffer a bit before receiving treatment. After realizing what had happened, Herzog began to cry, and after a moment he asked what she wanted from him. She asked him who was to blame for his tears, and he repeated his question about what she wanted, since she had clearly come here for a reason, assuring her that he had nothing to offer in return, since he had nothing left but his title. This is what she needed. And so, addressing him by name, Duke Leonardo Eberk, who was an unfortunate boy who had fallen under the influence of his greedy brother, she wished to take his noble name, after which he embraced her and asked if she proposed marriage. But he was immediately pushed away. The woman assured him that she did not understand what he meant, and then, in a misunderstanding, he said that she had said that she wanted his name, and she confirmed it, adding that she did not understand what the wedding had to do with it. She wanted to be adopted. Her late father, meanwhile, was informed that Saint Gloria had left the estate, and witnesses saw her carrying a giant suitcase, and the master was furious and asked why he had only just learned about it, to which the servant frightenedly assured him that he had ordered that even her name not be mentioned in front of him. When he calmed down a bit, he asked how it had happened, but the servant could not answer, and so the man became even angrier, asking how no one in a house full of people could remember such important information. The servant told him everything he knew, that on the day he called the saint to him, she left this office and packed her things, and then immediately left, and more than a week has passed since then. The owner suddenly staggered, frightening the servant, but after a moment he assured her that everything was fine, and then let the servant go. And recalling what he had said to her then, he realized that he just wanted to scare her a little bit, and that made him start to worry. The Duke, meanwhile, upon learning the shocking news, asked her if she had gone mad, and then asked if she knew how old he was, to which she suggested that he was about 25. The man corrected her, assured her that she was 24, and asked her how old she was, to which she explained that she had become an adult last month, and even after that she wanted to be adopted. The heroine began to explain that she had powers and abilities, not ordinary ones, but divine ones. But now she was in a very disadvantageous position, as she had been kicked out of her family and had become a commoner again, and so now she needed someone who was not connected to the first group and could protect her from the emperor and the temple. She realized that the Duke's influence would clearly not be enough to stand up to the others, but she was in no position to choose, and now he was taking stock of the fact that she did want to be adopted, even though he was only 4 years older. Perhaps it didn't matter to her, but not to him. He had spent 5 years of his life cursing, and then she suddenly appeared and wanted to make him the father of his 20-year-old daughter. But she herself didn't see anything strange in this, and therefore didn't understand what was strange about it. To which the Duke, already shouting, said that she was either stupid or very naive, since it didn't take much thinking to realize that it was all nonsense, and he would not accept such an absurd condition, and especially since he only had a name, he had nothing else to offer. The heroine assured him that she would decide for herself what would help her and what would not. And so the man had to explain, saying that it was quite obvious who had brought him to this state, and as soon as it became known that he was cured of the curse, the emperor would try to kill him again. Perhaps it was not a curse, but in the end the most important thing was that he was now a threat to him. But for some reason the woman, as if not listening, assured him that it was fine, and the Duke realized that she still did not understand anything, and so he asked how many times he had to repeat the same thing. She got rid of the magic spell, and now her mere existence was becoming a problem for the emperor, to which the saint assured him that this was exactly what she needed, and then, shouting at him, assured him that he should be more careful and less irritated, since not much time had passed since the treatment, and he needed to fully recover his strength first. After calming down a bit, they started drinking tea, and as soon as the man started drinking, the woman said that this empire was going to collapse, thus making him spit out everything he had just drunk, after which she approached him and said that he would regain the power that rightfully belonged to him, and she would help him put his family back on its feet, and then he would become her rear. The aristocrats, traitors meanwhile, sat down for tea and began to discuss the latest gossip. About 2 weeks had passed, and they asked who knew how the saint left the estate, to which Kais said that today the priests came to the imperial palace again. They claimed that the gossip that Gloria was not a saint was false, and that someone had deliberately let her in to accuse her, and then the prince demanded an answer from the cardinal, asking how this had happened, to which he assured them that he knew nothing about it, as he was busy teaching the new saint. The prince claimed that such unwanted attention was annoying. His Majesty ordered to appoint a new saint as a member of the first group, and at that moment, Demonian intervened, assuring that something did not add up. No one knew why the emperor needed to give such an order at such an important moment, because next week the group was to go out to defend the western border. The cardinal confirmed that this was why he was preparing the new saint for the first battle, but in spite of everything, the emperor still asked to find Gloria. Everyone remembered the day when the church recognized her power. It was hard to forget. The news of a child of low birth who had received divine power quickly spread throughout the empire. But still the new Saint Iriana belonged to a noble family, the Marquise of Rotesa. On the day when Gloria received the stigamat, there were too many witnesses who saw the six-pointed star, and then she ascended in the eyes of others. The oracle still did not say that there could be only one saint, but in the end, the cardinal said that it did not matter, because Iriana would prove her worth once she demonstrated her strength during the campaign against the monsters. It is quite possible that it was beneficial for both the emperor and the temple to have several saints. They probably did not care about the truth of the saint and would try to use them both. Perhaps they were only wasting time creating a new saint. But if the temple suddenly declares Gloria to be the one and only saint, then they may be in trouble. Demonian sincerely did not understand how this would affect them, even if it did. Because their motives had not changed at all, they had agreed to get rid of the saint, and they should not change their choice, under any circumstances. And so it was only necessary to send a new saint to fight the monsters. The Duke himself, meanwhile, was taking a bath, and all the time he was thinking about the offer that the saint gave him. He did not know how he could adopt a 20-year-old girl, and such a cunning one at that. When he came out of the bath, the heroine was waiting for him, and when she saw him, she was visibly surprised. She thought she had seen enough of other soldiers, But this was a completely different level. After a moment, she gathered herself and said that he told her he would not be there for long, but he was lying there for almost an hour, after which she asked him what happened to his clothes and why he did not change, to which he, not knowing how to answer, asked to ask slowly, as he had just been cured not long ago. The woman listened to him and started asking questions more slowly, and first she wondered why everything was so slow, to which she received the answer that he was not used to washing himself. Apologizing, she asked what was wrong with his clothes, and he replied that for the last 5 years he had been dressed in the same thing, and therefore there were no other outfits. And then the question arose what he had been eating all this time, which made the man think. But she already knew the answer. If he was not receiving the necessary care, then he was probably being fed whatever he wanted, after which she took a cup and started drinking his tea, to which he took it away, scared, and said that he could not drink it. The Duke said that it was impossible to drink the tea because it was poisoned, which shocked the saint. She asked who could have done it, and the man said that anyone, such as the maids, and then she was even more shocked, as he drank the tea when she poured it for him. Demonstratively drinking everything in the cup, he said that it did not make him cold or hot. He was not susceptible to poison, especially since he was already used to it. And yet she could not understand why he would drink poisoned tea, to which the man assured that if he did not do so, the emperor would find another way to kill him, and it would be better to use the method he was already familiar with, although at first he had to cough up blood. While drinking the poison, he was happy that she did not suspect that he had already guessed, and so he asked her how she still wanted to destroy this empire. As the woman approached him, she grabbed the man's hand and told him not to drink it, and although he had already said he was immune to it, it was still poison, and he still needed to restore his family's past greatness. After that, she angrily threw away all the dishes that could have contained poison, and a moment later, angrily, said that he should not have to endure if he already knew that the food was poisoned, and she did not calm down until she got the answer she needed from him. As for what she was going to do next, first they had to throw out his servants, because they would be leaving soon anyway, and when asked where, she said lightly that she did not know yet, and had not decided where. The man said that this was reckless, and she corrected him, assured him that it was inventive, and then asked him to sit in the room quietly, and she needed to leave for a while. When she went down to the ground floor of the manor, she realized that even the small old church in the village, which was not as poor as this manor, had no manager or guard. Entering the kitchen, the heroine met the maid and immediately demanded to know what she was doing here so late, to which she frightenedly hid something behind her back, assuring her that she had already thought the holiday was over. She assured me that there were still some things to do, and so she stayed. She saw the maid making tea, and so she said she would take a sip, to which she literally shouted and asked me not to touch it, arguing that the tea was medicinal and the taste would not be the most pleasant, so she would rather make another one. These words only increased the heroine's curiosity, and she reminded her that she had always treated soldiers during battles, so she could use it, to which the maid desperately tried to prevent the saint from drinking the tea, to which she had to tell her that she already knew about this poison. She tried to justify herself, denying all the accusations, but it was too late. After the third no, Sviataya said that a strong denial meant a sign of consent, and then asked who made her lie so desperately. The heroine said that there was no point in hiding this secret anymore, as she knew that all the servants of Duke Leonardo were ordered to put poison in his food. And she did not blame the maid for this, because she probably did it for her own safety, and therefore asked to give the poison to her, because the Duke would die soon. Hearing this, the shocked servant fell to her knees, not understanding whether it was her fault, because she was just following orders, and was told that it would only relax his muscles, and it would not be dangerous to his life, at which point she became hysterical, saying that it meant that his condition had worsened not only because of the spell, but also because of the poisonous herbs. The heroine hugged her, assuring her that it was not her fault, although she understood that the maid knew about the poison and put it in the tea anyway. But still the woman assured her that the Duke's curse had spread so far throughout his body that he could not be helped, and if she wanted to survive, she should leave here today, and let her take the other servants with her, and leave this place together before it was too late. Later, The saints and the master watched through the window as the servants were getting ready to leave. It seemed that they were really afraid of the curse. The man assured her that he did not believe that she would really drive everyone out, and now he wondered what she had said to them to cause such a strong reaction. The heroine explained that in order for them to leave without hesitation, she claimed that the curse could pass on to them, said that he would soon die, and there was a risk of contracting a disease. And not only that, she added that he would soon go to a better world. After that, they even began to thank her and praise her, and even though everyone called the saint a fake, until recently, she was still a saint, and her power did not depend on whether people believed in her or not. Sitting down next to him, she claimed that even she had never drunk poison, knowing that it was her, which surprised the man, and he asked what she meant, to which she asked him to guess, to which he asked if there were people who did not hate the saint, and the heroine said in turn that it would be easier to name those who had not. Falling into thought, he took a minute to summarize that people called her a liar, despite the fact that they saw her strength. He would like to look into the face of these crazy people himself. The heroine was embarrassed by such words, and when he turned his gaze to her, she felt even more uncomfortable. She also summed up that in any case, she would not see them again, knowing in her heart that it was for the best. But the most important thing now was his health, and to restore it, they needed to get out of here. The news that the servants had escaped would quickly reach the emperor, and it was only a matter of time. Maybe the emperor would even send people here to make sure he was dead. But before they left the empire, they still had to do something. As she said, she needed status. Otherwise, she would be easily disposed of and no one would care. And when she became an aristocrat, even the emperor himself would not be able to punish her without a trial. Tomorrow she was ready to bring the documents, pick up her things, and buy him a few suits. And to help him regain his strength, she would feed him well and train him, and then teach him how to defend himself so that he could always defend himself. But he had to promise that he would give her the surname of the Herzog family. The man promised to do so, but there was one thing. He was embarrassed and said that he was against adoption, which outraged the heroine. She asked what the reason was, and if there were any problems with it. She was ready to deal with everything. But it was not about that, and in general, he did not agree to adoption. After calming down a bit, he asked her if she was still angry, and she replied that she wouldn't be angry about such trifles, because she was no longer a child, and the Duke accepted this answer uncertainly, assuring her that he was not ready to become a father yet, and would find another way so that she would not sulk at him. The next day, in the middle of a noisy city, the woman went to a house where the owner initially said they were closed, but in response, he received that the client was very sorry, as she had not been here for a long time, and then he immediately recognized her and greeted Saint Gloria with happiness. It was Claude Lysiandres, and he was the head of the guild, and the woman assured him that she was glad to see him again, and later, they examined together what she had brought here, and after analyzing it, the man said that it would not work. He did not understand why she brought orc claws here, as there was no demand for them at all, to which the heroine assured that she had already sold everything valuable, and only this remained. The merchant assured her that he couldn't give her much for it, to which the customer was outraged, saying that he had already lowered the price last time for the gargoyle's wings, and to calm her down, the owner said that if the palace and the temple found out that she was selling monster corpses, this was enough to make her have no more complaints. The heroine remembered that before, he would have definitely given in to her. But now something happened. But nevertheless, she received a large sum, even more than she had expected from the beginning, to which he smilingly assured her that he could not offend the saint. She sincerely thanked him for his help, to which he responded by asking to come back, and in parting, the heroine decided to ask if he knew if anyone was selling a house. She needed a place for two, as far away from the capital as possible, and better in a safe place. After thinking about these words for a while, the man asked if something had happened, and she assured him that nothing was wrong. She just wanted to leave the group, especially since she was no longer a saint, and so next time, he should just call her Lady Gloria. After leaving the guild, she went to choose a costume. The man watched her and assumed that she was going to use a disguise. Later, she did come back, beaming with pleasure, holding packages with everything she had promised. And then it began. Her complete control over the Duke's life, watching him eat, despite the fact that he was uncomfortable, and then changing clothes, teaching him to fence. This went on for some time, and after the next shopping spree, she realized a terrible thing. When she counted her money, she saw that there was practically nothing left of her money. She couldn't believe that she had so little money left, as it was literally like yesterday that she was selling orc claws, and it couldn't just run out. There must be a reason why people said that money was a terrible thing. The next day, in the morning, she warned the Duke that she had to go somewhere, and it would take a long time, and therefore she would be late. The man assured her that she did not need to go so far, to which she said that today she had a different task. Namely, she was going to hunt monsters. Since she had practically no money left, she had no choice but to go out and earn it, and the man assured her that if that was all it was, he would do it. At this point she left, claiming that she had to go, and the Duke, left alone, realized that he was just about to announce that he had an inheritance. The woman was wandering in a dark forest, feeling a strong demonic aura somewhere nearby, when she suddenly saw a giant chimera in front of her, which had paws like a bear, wings like a dragon, scales, and 3 snake heads. He immediately launched an attack, and the heroine skillfully repelled the attack. Assessing the enemy, she realized that those eyes would have to cost a lot, and no matter how you slice it, she could not find another source of income now, and so she could only gouge out those eyes. Holy, skillfully dodged, and then struck a precise blow to one of the monster's heads, saying that she needed to deal with it quickly, as she would not want to keep Leonardo waiting. The beast suddenly flew into the air, and the warrior looked at the wound and realized that this would not work, and she could simply spoil the goods, and therefore she should use her sword, and if she wanted to bring it down with one blow, she should aim for the heart, not the head. And so she began to assess where the heart was. The demon, meanwhile, was preparing to attack again, and the saint saw this and prepared to fight back, but it didn't work out as she expected, and the monster managed to wound her by the shoulder, but she in turn hit him right under the head, but missed, as the monster was very nimble and did not allow him to hit the right spot, and then it was decided to try again. Leonardo, meanwhile, was practicing alone, practicing with his sword. The woman was still gone, the sun had already set, but he was still alone. He kept thinking about what time she intended to return. It was a dark night, and the man was sitting on the steps, waiting for her to come back, even when no one was around. He didn't have such feelings, and so he didn't understand what was happening to him. Suddenly, he saw her in front of him, a bloody woman carrying a package, but her eyes were determined, and he told her that she was late, to which she walked past him as if not noticing, and on the way up to the 2nd floor, asked if anything had happened here while she was gone. When she didn't get an answer, she went down to his eye level and repeated the question, and the man, surprised by this, assured her that it was nothing. He had been training all day and that was all, and she said that everything was fine, and that he would recover faster, and then went back to her work. In the back, the Duke asked her to come back faster next time, to which she asked if it was now that she could feel the care in his words, and then asked her to give him the mace. He intended to wipe it while she was washing, but he was firmly refused, arguing that it was too heavy, and he had not yet recovered enough to strain his body so much. These words shocked the man, but the heroine intended to do everything herself, and now she needed to borrow his clothes. She needed clothes, as hers were very dirty, and she had no other clothes. And then the Duke asked why she had bought only his clothes, indicating that she needed to worry about herself. But now she was only interested in whether he would give her his clothes or not. Some time passed, and the Duke was quietly reading a book, when suddenly she entered the room, and without taking his eyes off the book, he asked if she had finally finished. But after a moment he did pay attention to her, and saw her wearing only one of his shirts, which was clearly not her size. The Duke couldn't take his eyes off the heroine who was so open, and she asked what was wrong with him, to which he assured her that there should be towels in the bathroom and went to check. While he was leaving, she saw that he had made tea himself, and when he returned, she assured him that he shouldn't have worked so hard, and he received a similar response. He turned her head and began to wipe her with a towel, and while he was doing so, he asked her why she was doing so much for him. She hadn't spent a penny on herself, and she didn't spare any money for him. She even risked herself by going on a monster hunt, and he didn't understand who he was to do such feats for him. All he could do for her now was to dry her hair and then tie it up. After hearing all this, the heroine said that about 3 years ago, she went to a ball at the Imperial Palace, and there she accidentally heard aristocrats talking about him. People were saying that the emperor had a brother who was much younger than him, and he lived in an abandoned house, and he was slowly dying there, and everyone around him was discussing his curse and illness. They said that it was his birthday, and she could not understand why they were all so happy about someone else's misfortune. That's when she decided that they could make good allies, because they were very similar. She thought they would make a good team now, and before she met him, she had always been on her own, which is why she couldn't treat him any differently now, because she had already said she would help him. The heroine was ready to take care of everything, and all he had to do was think about how to regain his strength and power. But that was exactly what bothered him. He felt uncomfortable because the saint took so much on herself, as if he was not worthy of anything. She assured him that in return she had received a promise that she would get his name, and therefore it was a fair deal, and therefore he should think less about nonsense. The heroine realized that he simply underestimated his power, that many influential families were just waiting to use him, and so now she lightly assured him that he should take more care of his health. The Duke finally felt calmer after hearing these words, and when he was near her, he felt as if God had not yet abandoned him, and therefore sent this woman as if as a reward for all the hardships he had experienced. He reminded her that he was different from ordinary people, that he wielded a sword and could even take part in battles, and the heroine confirmed this, assuring him that he was good, because he had been fighting the spell for so long and was finally able to defeat it. And meanwhile, she took out the letter and began to reread it. In the letter, there was a list of tasks that she had to complete, and the only completed item at the moment was to find a place to live. And then she asked if the cart with provisions from the Imperial Palace would arrive in 3 days, and he confirmed that it would be black as usual, and if nothing happened, it should arrive around noon. The man was very curious to see what she was looking at so intently, so he climbed on her bed, and once they were close together, the heroine was embarrassed again, but nevertheless explained that she was just checking what else they needed to do. After looking through the list, the Duke was visibly surprised by the item about stealing the imperial carriage, and the woman confirmed this, adding that as soon as it arrived, they would take their things and leave this place, because she had already found a new home for them. In the middle of the night, the Duke entered the woman's room and began to wake her up, claiming that someone had entered the house, and not even one, but at least 3. And when they got up, they stopped at the window, and they assumed that they might have come for him, and the saint was determined not to let Leonardo get hurt again, and she was ready to do anything to protect him. While they were looking through the window at the guests, it turned out that there were even 4 of them, and he noticed that there were a lot of them for one sick duke, and when asked if this had happened before, he said that it was the first time, and most likely the emperor had found out that he had dismissed his servants. They might have already known that the saint was hiding here, but it was hard to say for sure, and then the Duke apologized for getting her involved. But she assured him that there was nothing to apologize for, as she knew from the beginning that this would happen sooner or later. But no matter how many mercenaries His Majesty sent, they would deal with everyone. Approaching the door, she began to listen to what was happening inside, and after a moment she ordered him to stay here, and if someone did break in, let them fight. The man knew that she intended to deal with it on her own, but he still believed in her, and so he agreed to her plan. Left alone, the man took a sword out of the closet. He knew that if the killer was experienced, they would first try to break into his bedroom, because he was their target. The heroine was standing outside the door at the time, and she clearly realized that she could not let them touch Leonardo with a finger. In a moment, she realized that she would be fighting people for the first time, not monsters, and therefore did not know whether she would be able to control her power, as she would not really want to kill them. Suddenly, she heard the first one enter the house, and in a moment she met his eyes. He was very shocked to see the saint inside, but his surprise did not have time to disappear, as she instantly kicked him, knocking him unconscious, and then hoping that he was still alive after that. In a moment, the rest of the assassins appeared, and they were ready to fight such an opponent, But this only made the task easier for the heroine, and to some extent, she was glad of it. She neutralized the first one with a punch in the groin, and the others saw it and started to scramble, but it was enough for her to get them, and in a few minutes they were all lying in one pile, and the man saw it and thought they were all dead, but the heroine assured him that they were just unconscious. The woman was sincerely pleased with this result, but there was one question, namely what would happen if they woke up and ran away before they left, to which the saint claimed that she had some poisonous herbs hidden and could get them drunk, to which the Duke remarked that she spoke about it as easily as if she were going to feed them bread. But in the end, they agreed that they should interrogate them to find out who was behind it. The man assured her that he would take care of it, and she should go to rest. He was ready to interrogate her to make sure that the emperor had sent them, to which the heroine assured him that she would wait in the hallway. But the Duke insisted that she go to the bedroom. The woman wanted to know why he did not want her to be here, and then asked if he did not want her to wait for him. She did not understand what happened. He changed his face dramatically, and she thought they got along well. But maybe she was wrong. Leonardo said that if someone else had sent them, it would mean that he had more opponents than he thought, and therefore he had to find out the name of the customer at any cost. And then she realized that he was going to torture them, and he confirmed it, adding that he did not want her to get her hands dirty, so he needed her to wait in the room. Left alone, he raised his sword in front of him, and suddenly everything around him was illuminated with green light, and in a moment, one of the attackers woke up and was shocked to see the Duke in front of him. Calling him a master of the sword, he asked him in surprise if he hadn't died of a curse, to which he briefly asked if the emperor had sent them, and when he received no answer, he smilingly asserted that he would have to use the power of the sword. The saint on the second floor, meanwhile, was in a state of confusion. She didn't understand whether Leonardo, with his mild temperament, would be able to torture them. But in a moment, everything around her began to glow, and she heard the screams of the attackers. She couldn't believe her eyes. The glow of the aura was so strong that it penetrated the door, which meant she didn't need to worry. The next morning, she learned that the whole thing was the work of the prince. The Duke assured her that he suspected him, but he did not think that he would really send mercenaries. But Sveta realized that such a dastardly move was in his style. She understood that after the hunt, the dogs had to be killed, as it was unknown whose neck they would gnaw if left alive. The man explained that he had always wanted him dead, but the heroine did not understand the reason, and assumed that he could have threatened his succession to the throne. But this was immediately ruled out, since he, like the emperor, was deprived of green eyes. Suddenly, the heroine stood up and approached the man closely, looking at his eyes, wondering if they had any meaning other than the fact that they testified to the imperial blood, since they looked completely ordinary. Blushing, and turning his gaze in the other direction, the Duke assured that he had reached the level of a swordmaster at a young age, and only he could do it, because he was a descendant of a dragon. This information shocked the saint, to which the man reminded him that he had already said that he was special. It meant that dragons really existed, and all this time she had thought that they only existed in fairy tales, how people asked dragons for help, but they burned everyone until they found the one they loved, although there was nothing to be surprised about, since the god had given her the power to heal, which meant that dragons could exist in peace. And then she remembered that the princess also had green eyes, and she wondered if she also had any special powers. As soon as the girl received her power, on the same day, in the temple, the priest began to explain to her what it meant. She had been awarded a rare gift. It was normal to be afraid of it, because controlled fear, on the contrary, could help her survive, and he asked her to remember this. The feeling that filled her heart was no worse than any other: happiness, sadness, or anger. He handed the girl a mace. The man asked her to take it and go forward. Took a few steps. The child began to feel a predatory look on her, and so in a moment she turned around and said she was scared. The man said that she had nothing to fear, and at that moment he began to strangle her, saying that she had the power to heal and therefore would not die. In a moment he began to turn into a giant wolf, and at the same moment he attacked the little girl. At that moment she woke up, covered in sweat, realizing that it was just a dream, and that the temple was the place of residence of demons who hid under the mask of mercy, and she could not even imagine this until she became a child of God. And now she wondered if the new saint was worried about her. And at that moment, Leonardo suddenly appeared next to her, and the saint said that he scared her, after which she asked if he had been reading the book again all night, sitting next to her, to which he assured her that he had just woken up early. So the heroine claimed that she had to wake her up, as they had to prepare for departure. But in response, she received the statement that she had slept very sweetly, and he had already managed to pack his things himself. Later, the sounds of a horse were heard, and the Duke confirmed that a cart with provisions had arrived, and so it was time for them to leave. But turning around, he saw a completely ready saint, who said that she would do everything herself, and he should take his things, after which, to his surprise, she jumped right out of the window. Very quickly, she approached the people guarding the cart, and quickly began to knock them out one by one. The last one managed to notice that the attacker was a saint, and he saw fear in his eyes. He could only ask what she was doing here, but it was useless, and he was knocked out by the blow, as well as the others. Everything turned out to be much easier than she expected, and when the Duke came down, he asked if she had suddenly killed them, and after these words, she thought about it. And looking around, she was suddenly afraid. Checking the bodies, she couldn't believe it, because she was trying to control her power. But after a moment of checking one of them, she happily assured him that he was alive, and the man was happy to see such care for people. Looking at these people, he did not really understand how it was possible to hit them so hard that such strong people would cough up blood, to which the heroine continued to assure him that she had tried to do it softer. Entering the carriage, the Duke, smiling gently, assured them that it was time to go. The heroine, looking at this, realized that it would not be a problem if she showed him, and therefore said that before leaving, she would like to introduce him to someone. When she arrived at the cemetery, the woman stopped in front of one of the graves and started talking to it, addressing Key, asking how he had been doing all this time, adding that he was about to leave the capital, and so she decided it was worth telling him about him. Gloria invited Leonardo to say hello, claiming that her old friends were buried here. They had communicated when she was not a saint, and only the church was to blame for their deaths. When she became a saint, they all settled together in a shelter at the temple. But one day, when she was 15 years old and there was no one in the temple, a pack of orcs suddenly appeared, and later she demanded an answer from the emperor, where the guards were at that time, and why no one protected them. But she received no answer, only a contemptuous look, and after that she promised to take revenge on them. So the man was not alone in wanting revenge. Riding in the carriage, the man kept looking at his companion, and then he dared to ask if they were really just going to leave. He could not believe that they were finally leaving the capital, and it was not even that he was sorry to leave home. He was grateful that she had helped him get out of that hell, but now he still had some strange feelings. He dreamed about this day every day, but did not hope that it would ever come. Suddenly, the man said that he had been wanting to say something for a long time, namely that he had good savings. It was an inheritance from his mother, and it should probably be enough for them to live on, and therefore she would no longer have to hunt monsters. Her reaction was not long in coming, and in response he received only screams. The woman was outraged that he was trying to make her look like the last animal who wanted to get someone else's money. She claimed that it was all that was left of his mother, and moreover, she had left it not to anyone but to him specifically, and if necessary, she was ready to spend the night, even on the street. But she had no intention of taking his money. After a while, they finally arrived in the right city, and after driving inside, they saw a giant mansion. The heroine was pleased with what she saw, and the man cautiously assured her that it looked quite good. Once inside, they noticed that no one had lived here for a very long time, and everything was covered in cobwebs. The man looked at it coldly, and after a minute asked if she was sure she didn't want to use his savings. As the Duke was looking around the estate, he was suffering from the dust that was everywhere, and suddenly Gloria noticed the basement and decided to see what was there, and what she saw made her scream, and her husband came running to hear her scream. The man was about to draw his sword when the heroine suddenly sneezed loudly, and then said that there was a lot of dust around and that it was time to start cleaning. Wearing a cloth over their faces to protect them from the dust, they started cleaning. The man started sweeping while the women carried furniture and threw what was unnecessary outside. Hours went by, but the cleaning did not end, and towards evening, everything was brought back to human form, and now it was finally possible to live here. And when they finished, they lay down on the floor with a sigh of relief, summing up that everything was quite good to begin with. The next morning, the woman woke up with great difficulty and suddenly heard the sounds of her husband outside, and she was visibly surprised that he was already working so early, and looking out the window, she saw him practicing with a sword. As she watched him train, she realized that he had indeed become more enduring, as if she were watching and evaluating him. His sword swings had become stronger, and he was so cute that even the sounds he made during training were pleasant to listen to. And then she decided that perhaps it was time for her to start doing chores. Later, he finished and was reading a book in the corridor when he saw that the saint was getting ready to go somewhere, and when he got up, he asked where she was going, but in response, he was ordered to turn his head, which he obediently did, and the next order was to turn his back, and having done so, she said that he looked very good in the new clothes, and she had not bought them in vain. The man continued to ask where she was going, and what kind of strange behavior she was behaving like, to which the heroine said that it was time to save money in order to invest it in him in the future. These words confused the Duke, and he stammered and assured that in this case he would continue to hone his sword skills. When he left, the woman realized that he was obviously impressed by her words, but it was definitely not just them. When she was still a saint to others, she healed people without demanding anything in return, and yet it was worth waiting a little longer. Then she would bribe the pontiff, but this would require a lot of money. Suddenly, on the way out, she remembered that Leonardo had said that his friends were coming, and now it was time to buy something. They were not going to have a party, of course, but a delicious dinner was still worth preparing, so it would be worth hiring a butler in the future. Suddenly, she saw her old friend standing in front of the entrance, Claude, and seeing the star on her head, he was surprised at first, but after accepting it, he continued to smile, assuring her that he had been told that she was no longer going to hunt monsters, to which she confirmed, adding that she could not help it, as she had to live on something. Now, looking at him, she realized that he was a rather handsome man, and for some reason she hadn't noticed it before. She had heard that he had successfully founded a guild, and he looked much more noble than a prince, and so he was clearly hiding something. Now, she was wondering why he was here, as she was just about to go to his store, but he was here. The man blushed a little, and uncertainly assured that he had decided to find out if she liked the castle, but the woman realized that he was not telling her the truth, and summed up that he wanted to meet her, and so she wanted to know what happened. The heroine directly said that she needed helpers, to which the man, after a little thought, called her Lady Gloria. She realized that he still remembered how she asked to be addressed, and it was quite nice of him. And after a moment, he said that he did not want to disappoint her, but it is unlikely that there is anyone who would want to take part in the monster hunt. The woman realized that there had been a misunderstanding, so she explained that she could handle the business herself, so now she needed a manager, maids, and a good cook. Realizing his mistake, the guest apologized, and then confirmed that such a beautiful castle definitely needed a noble butler. The woman listened to his words and realized that he was right, and that for Leonardo to be able to lead the knights and invite friends, everything should look presentable, including the servants. Sviatia agreed with him on this point, and then he made an unexpected suggestion, namely, he asked her what she thought about hiring him, since he was not currently employed. She was shocked by this news, but in a moment she learned that his guild had become a victim of a natural disaster, and then she panicked, as she no longer knew to whom to sell the monster's eyes. With the money, she was supposed to hire a butler and a cook. The man assured her that he would serve her well and faithfully like no other, and it would not be easy to find an assistant like him who would be able to sell monster body parts and find saints, and she understood that this was true. But if it was true about his guild, then she had nothing to offer him, and he, in turn, asked her to trust him, as he would definitely not let down the expectations that would be placed on him. In a moment, he felt someone coming, And turning around, he said that this was the chance to demonstrate his worth. The heroine looked behind him and saw something that made her incredibly terrified. Before her, on a horse, rode Cardinal Joshua himself. The woman asked her friend to leave, as it was obvious that they had come for her. It seemed that he had tracked her divine energy. She of course assumed that he could find her before the others, but she could not have imagined that it would happen so quickly. The family of the Count of Fandale and the family of the Marquis of Ranark, from ancient times, were very devoted to the imperial court, and together with the temple, they made a huge contribution to the affairs of the empire and the destruction of monsters that appeared in different parts of the country. They were unrivaled. And so when she was adopted, she often saw Joshua. He was a cardinal, but at first he was the precious youngest son of a noble family. He had always seemed like a hero who had stepped out of a fairy tale, and if he didn't say anything else now, she was ready to let him go in peace. And at that moment he claimed that this was where she had run away to, adding that it was a hellhole, and that was enough to make her angry. After a moment, he added that in general this place suited her very well. The monster's nest was always just as dirty, and he wondered if the ability to find such bad places could also be called an ability. Suddenly, the woman let go of the mace she had been holding in her hand all along, and it fell to the ground with a thud, and the guest was terrified, putting his hands forward in fear, wondering if she had decided to show off her strength to him. But the heroine's intentions were completely different. She just let go of the mace in the hope that it would at least somehow make him shut up, and it looked like he was a coward and remained so. But now it was incredibly itchy to hit him once. But she knew she shouldn't do it. Or if she touched the cardinal, there might be some problems. While she was looking at him, the guest said that it was time to move on to more important things. But unable to bear the look he was being rewarded with, he angrily asked why she was looking at him like that. And she responded by asking him how she was looking at him, expecting him to explain it to her, but he had no intention of doing so. Now he ordered her to answer the questions clearly and precisely, and the first question was what the hell she was doing here. Smiling slyly, he said that running away was not an option, and he could always find her by divine power. Not receiving an answer, he felt confident and morally superior to his opponent, and therefore allowed himself to be rude, asking why she had bitten her tongue, and that she should definitely be ashamed when everyone found out that she had been deceiving ordinary people all along. The heroine tried to control herself, wondering what this provocation was for and why he was here to piss her off, since they had exposed her as a fake, and so now she asked if he had come here to quarrel. This presentation angered the cardinal, who, tired of this dialogue, said that he seemed to have nothing else to do, to which he asked her to repeat what she had just said to him, which made the woman say arrogantly that he had nothing else to do. The aristocrat was shocked by this manner of speaking, and the heroine, coming closer, asked if it didn't suit her, because she was an ordinary poor woman who was very lucky to have a stigmat, and if she didn't have it, she would still be living on the street. The man could not understand where such insolence came from, because she was definitely not in the best position right now, since she was expelled from the family, called a fake. So how could she have so much confidence in her? And meanwhile, she asked if he had come here alone. The guest confirmed this, followed by a question whether no one else knew that she was here, to which he assured him that he could say that because he was the only one who could track her divine power. And a moment later, the last question followed, whether it was the temple that ordered to find her, to which he irritably asserted that they had already forgotten about her. This information made the heroine exhale with relief, and in a moment a smile appeared on her face. The cardinal looked at her for a while, not understanding whether she had always had such beautiful eyes, and in a moment she punched him in the stomach. Having done her job in a calmer voice, the saint said that it was for talking to her like that. But next time it would not be so easy, and the man himself looked at her quietly, knowing that he had a crystal around his neck that recorded everything. But if the temple saw her hitting him, everyone would only laugh, because he was going to show how miserable she had become. Looking at the pitiful cardinal, a mouth suddenly appeared near her face, which affirmed that she had done the right thing, and hearing this suddenly frightened her, after which she asked if he had been near her all along, not that she received confirmation, as he was told not to leave, but simply to move away. Now the man asked if she was sure that the cardinal could be let off, Perhaps she should have taught him more, and Sviataya assured him that she had not forgiven him. But if she did not stop at one blow, she might have new problems. But in the end, she was sure that he would be ashamed to talk about it, and therefore he would keep his mouth shut. Suddenly, a possible butler assured her that the guest should not have treated her like that. But he knew several curses that could not be broken until death, and if she wished, he could put some on him. With a horrified realization, she asked if he was a dark wizard, to which she received confirmation, and in fact she had not seen dark wizards when she was a child. The boy was interested in her abilities, and wanted to take her to the magic tower to begin conducting experiments. Now, he did not get the consent. He assured her that he would look for another way. And then she asked why he needed all this, and after some thought, the man said that he was worried about her, because she was too young and kind. But she said that it was all a mistake. Knowing that the monsters continued to pose a threat to people, she ran away anyway, and it was not an act of a good person, but of Claude, who flippantly stated that he was just being nice to those he liked. And even if she considered herself a bad person, this world was doomed. In a moment, the smile on his face changed to anger, and he continued to explain that she had left alive those people who had used her, and now hated her, calling her a fake. That was kindness, although she should not show mercy to such people, as they were garbage who were not worthy of her attention. The heroine was surprised by such statements, and listening to him realized that the more pleasant words he said to her, the more beautiful he became in her eyes. And finally, with a slight smile, he asked if she would still consider his offer and give work to the poor and unfortunate. She realized that this was exactly why he was trying so hard, but in the end, she said that she did not intend to hire him, to which he was genuinely surprised, wondering if he was that disgusting to her. But that wasn't the point. She admitted that she really liked him, but he looked suspicious, which meant that she couldn't trust him with the house, and after she finished, she went on about her business, and Claude just smiled. He always knew that she had good intuition. After a moment, he ran up to her and asked if she could give him a trial period before officially hiring him. She could assure him that he was useful, or vice versa, and he was not going to ask for any payment for that. And she thought about it, because it was even stranger to refuse to pay. Meanwhile, at his father's estate, Earhart, who was Gloria's cousin and also the commander of the second group, walked around the estate looking for his father, but could not find him anywhere, to which a servant claimed that the emperor had summoned him to his room in the morning, but he never said when he would return. The brother realized that the emperor would not forgive such disrespectful treatment of the saint, and his father had made a big mistake when he let the treasure of the empire go so easily. And so now he asked if there was any news about the saint, Lady Gloria. The servant, worried, assured him that the master was probably unaware, but that the woman they called a saint was not real, but of course a poor woman. Hearing this, the brother threw the servant out, said that he had no time to listen to such nonsense, and left alone. He realized that everyone must have gone mad if they dared to do this to Gloria.